No, it took me straight to YouTube. That's awesome.
That's how pretty links work.
Pretty. How pretty.
Super pretty. Speaking of pretty, it's Podcast PD for Sunday, April 5th, 2020. And we are live in front of a live studio audience, I guess. I don't know. But we are back again here live talking about education and other such fun things as we roll for about an hour or so. Depends on how you engage with us here on this live show. My name is Chris Nessie, at Mr. Nessie on Twitter, and I am joined as always by my Podcast PD compadres, Stacey Lindis and AJ Bianco. Co-host AJ, what is up, my brother?
I'm doing very well on this Sunday. We had a great day today. The weather is beautiful. We were outside like all afternoon. Got to be honest with you. Boys are riding their scooters. We were cleaning out the garage. And now we're going to do a little Podcast PD. We had a little coffee EDU this morning, a little coffee EDU fun for the North New Jersey crowd. Thank you, Chris Nessie.
It was fun. It was my second North Jersey coffee EDU. And let me tell you, it's a memorable experience, which I will discuss later today.
Oh, okay.
I will discuss.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it.
I think the most exciting thing right now is Stacey's back.
Stacey back.
How's it going, gentlemen?
It's going good.
For AJ, I'm with you.
How are you doing?
What's that?
We're more concerned with how you're doing.
I don't know. Like, I feel like, I think I texted you guys, like, I'm not meant to be an indoor cat. And I know it's like the lamest thing to say when there are like so many people doing such amazing things during this time, like nurses and other medical professionals throwing themselves into literally like the line of fire with this whole thing. But I get a little stir crazy, and I worry, not for myself, because I don't think that I have like issues with depression. I think that this is like, I definitely have like some probably minor like seasonal affect stuff, like where like winter just kind of went the winter blues, right? And I just feel like not being able to come out of winter properly has really
winter ended like 2 weeks ago, right?
But it doesn't feel like it ended 2 weeks ago because of this whole thing. Like usually winter you get together, like absolutely not. Usually at the end of winter you get to like participate in spring rituals, going out, meeting with friends, doing things outdoors, and you can do some things outdoors, but you can't do it all. And like, that's the part that has really affected me in a way that I never really expected. I remember being home with the boys when they were little, and like in the summers and stuff, and just itching for Doug to get home so we could do something together as a family. So it wasn't just the three of us. And now I just feel like that's our lives. And like, I joke that I'm not meant to be an indoor cat, and I really like that part of it is like, yeah, that part's getting to me. And Albert's saying probably because it really wasn't a winter. And I think that's part of it too. Like nothing seems to have changed except the trees are changing, which I'm welcoming those beautiful signs of spring that lead to summer and like hopefully like an end to all of this. But I also think wrapping my head around the fact that like we are likely not going back to school has been a bit of a struggle. That I'm preparing myself for now, just so that come June, it doesn't hit me like a gut punch, that like it's still going, Yeah. So I just needed a little bit.
Also want to say hello to Christine Sorrentino. She's out in the chat. Howdy, folks. Welcome back. AJ, you're good?
I'm golden, man. I mean, nice. I understand what Stacey is saying. And like, I was nervous at first when they're like, okay, don't go anywhere. I need to do stuff, but luckily for me, the weather has been beautiful. So I've been able to go outside. We've been playing baseball in the yard with the kids. Kids are on the playground. I've been able to just kind of hang out and not be in the house. Like if this was wintertime and it was cold or snowy, then I would have had a bigger problem. But because there's excuse me, there's kind of these activities that I can do and keep myself busy, that I'm doing okay. It'd be nice to hit some golf balls, but that's not gonna happen. Softball's canceled, so I'm not playing softball. So just playing baseball.
Batting cages are closed.
Yeah. I've just been taking the role of kid, and I've been throwing against the pitch back a little bit, hitting off the tee, doing all the fun stuff. Getting in training for the next season.
There you go. You'll come back stronger, right? What about you, Chris?
I mean, things are good. I mean, we'll talk education. this weekend, my big project was repurposing a 2x4 couch that was on my front porch. The boss decided she didn't want that anymore, and we ordered some new stuff that's coming this week. And I repurposed this couch, dismantled it, chopped it up into other pieces, and made a bench, a very simple bench, which I will post some pictures up on the socials. But that was my project for today. It was beautiful out. Got to take the scooter out for a little ride this afternoon, and life is okay. It is what it is. I'm on spring break this week, so I can be home and be home, with some semblance of relaxation.
That's pretty good. I don't know spring break. These spring break next week.
Okay. I mean, it's coming. You just got to get through this week.
Absolutely.
But you do have a spring break, right?
They did not cancel our spring break, or we.
So I'd say let's talk about that real quick. I know we're talking about like how all of these changes impact or will impact like education in the future, but let's talk about like some of the decisions that people are making that are impacting people right now. So like, I saw a couple people post on Facebook that they no longer have spring break, and you have spring break, right? AJ, you just go out on Friday. Is that it?
We will be off Friday and then the spring break. Yeah.
Right. How about you, Chris?
I am off this week and then the day after Easter.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay, Easter Monday. Okay.
Yeah.
So my break starts on Wednesday, and then I have the entire week after that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we have a long break because we didn't take any snow days because, as Albert pointed out, it was a beautiful winter without a lot of snow. So I have an extra long spring break, and I think I'm ready for it. I don't know what it's going to be different, but I'm ready for just a little bit of a break in the routine that's not just called a weekend,
Yeah. And last week we were talking to the kids from Waldwick, and we talked about the fact, like, do you guys think that this will change snow days? And it very well could really change the way we look at snow days from now on. It's unfortunate though, because it really isn't fair. Like, a snow day should be a snow day, but this could totally change everything going forward. If this actually works and people take it seriously, as many are, then it might be the fact that snow days are no longer a thing.
I don't know that snow days would go away. I think that like Snowmageddon wouldn't exist, right? I think kids would still get to enjoy like maybe a day. If it was just like, it's a snow day that affects one single day of school, it's a snow day. But I think if it's like one of those things where it's like 2 or 3 days, 4 days, we've had those in the past before in New Jersey, and that really is quite disruptive.
Yeah, you're right. That could be a total different thing. I didn't think about that. It could be, instead of that 2-day or 3-day stretch where you're not going back, that you get the 1 day snow and the next day the learning can take place.
Yeah. I mean, there's potential there. And I think people are hopefully, what are we, week 3? Some of us are a little bit longer. Some of us are a little bit shorter. But like, 3 weeks in, hopefully people are feeling comfortable enough with this remote learning that that type of thing wouldn't be such a big stretch, even if it was for like a 1 or 2 day stint.
I mean, I understand why people are losing the break. I mean, they're losing the break and then getting out, a week earlier. I think some of our good friends, Danny Kennis and Adam Schoenbart in New York, I don't think they have a break at all. I think that's been announced for all of New York, that there is no spring break. So in Jersey, we're lucky that we have a break. I don't know what it's going to do after the fact. I guess we're going to see that, right? We're going to see if kids can really refocus and get involved in the learning again after a week off of really doing probably nothing, especially not being pushed to do anything. So we'll see how that takes place.
Right.
All right, well, I guess that kind of gets us into our topic tonight. And again, the theme of tonight's conversation is how is spring 2020 going to impact education going forward? And we have a queue of callers. So again, if you are in the chat and you want to participate in tonight's show, all you have to do is go to podcastpd.com/join. And joining us right now, old friend of the podcast, fine New Jersey educator. Please welcome Jill from somewhere in New Jersey.
Hey, guys.
Hi, Jill. Look at that shirt. I am a principal. What's your superpower? That's brilliant.
Thanks. One of my teachers made it for me this year.
Oh, that's beautiful.
How's everybody holding up?
I think we're doing pretty well. How's everything going for you? How's this big global digital learning taking place for you?
It's been an experience. You have to remember I'm at elementary school, so I'm dealing with pre-K through fourth graders. So it is really reshaped and redefined how we look at education and virtual education. Us at elementary school have never had to deal with this really before, with this distance learning. And so it has been quite the experience, and just trying to manage the amount of emails that now fly in every single day, as I'm sure all of you are also doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what are you guys doing in your school for the kids? How did you do the rollout for the technology? Is there technology, or is there a lack of technology? Let's go with those 3 questions, I guess.
All right. So, whoa, those are 3 loaded questions. But okay. So what we did was we planned for the first 3 weeks, and we did a lot of sending home packets, and we were looking at just maintaining learning, and that was our focus for the next 3 weeks, because we really thought that after spring break, which we're having right now and this upcoming week, we would be back on Monday after Easter. And, now that it's not looking like that, we had to redesign everything. And so our 3rd and 4th graders were already in Google Classroom, and they were in there as an entire grade level, because we were fortunate enough that we're a small enough school where that we could put everybody into one classroom, and the teachers could then, manage the assignments and handle the questions and things like that. When we realized that, okay, this is going to be a lot longer than we expected, and we shifted from maintaining to continuing education, that's when the big shift occurred. And so last week, we got our kindergarten through 2nd graders all into Google Classroom. Each one is now having each teacher's having their own Google Classroom. But what they're doing is they're dividing and conquering. And so each teacher is taking a content area and going to focus in on that, produce the lessons for it, produce the activities for it, send it out to the team, and then the team is going to differentiate it based upon their classroom. Our 3rd and 4th grade, since they were already in Google Classroom, they're going to stay in the classroom that they're in, but behind the scenes, the teachers are dividing and conquering and sharing the workload, and really also relying on interventionists and our reading specialists for extra assistance with that. Our biggest juggle has been with special ed, and how do we now move like our resource room kids who are getting Orton Gillingham or getting a very specific program moving forward in this new virtual world of education? And so we've been kind of navigating that. Technology, thankfully, hasn't really been an issue. We've had a few parents reach out to me to say, we don't have enough devices. And so our tech team was fortunate enough to be able to make time slot arrangements so that parents could pick up school-based issued Chromebooks for them. Mm-hmm. But, for the most part, thankfully, technology hasn't been an issue. It's just been a matter of, okay, so-and-so hasn't checked in this week. Is everything okay? Who's reaching out to them? And, getting used to this new normal.
Yeah. So Jill, I'm curious. You said that you had one Google Classroom for the entire building. How big is your school? Like how many kids, roughly how many teachers?
Okay, so our building is approximately 42 certified staff members, and we have, so for kindergarten through 2nd grade, we have 4 sections of each grade level, and then 3rd and 4th grade, we have 3 sections. And so what we did was 3rd and 4th grade, so 3rd grade had their own Google Classroom. 4th grade had their own Google Classroom, and we populated all the kids into it. Our challenge became when we had to create accounts for K2, and then first of all, roll that out to the parents, and then get everybody loaded into their classrooms, and my specialists also. So now my specialists have also started creating Google Classrooms for each grade level. And so now it's like a push out now of how do we do that behind the scenes where the kids can only just have to click into the classrooms instead of getting the code and going to find it and all of that, especially, when you're talking art, music, library, STEM, right. PE, it's a lot in addition to just the regular classroom.
And what's feedback from parents been like? Because, the other thing that I do is look at what the parents in my community have to say about, my kids' former teachers. And I'm just like, wow, like some of it is amazing and some of it is disheartening. So what's parent feedback been like for you?
I think it's been the same everywhere. It's been a mixed bag. It's been a lot of, wow, how do you do what you do? Like, we're really struggling with just 1 or 2 kids, and you deal with 18 to 24. How do you do it? But there's also been a lot of parent. One of the things to remember is that we're operating on a single day session, so we're operating on a half day type of schedule, and so our students are only expected to be on for a certain amount of time a day, engaged in schoolwork for a certain amount of time a day. And then the extra time at the end of the day is given to teachers to collaborate and meet together with their teams. Or I just held a virtual faculty meeting the other day.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. But it's just, it's just a matter of trying to find that balance. And one of the things that I've had to stress a lot with my teachers is that it's not about perfection. Like, we can't expect to deliver the instruction and the content that we would if we were face to face. And so we have to remember that. And we're really struggling and trying to find that balance of on screen versus off screen. And so far this past week, the feedback as we've made the shift is, wow, I'm so happy, we're kind of mainstreaming this and going into Google Classroom and moving forward. But at the same time, we appreciate you acknowledging as a school the fact that we don't want our kids sitting in front of a device all day. And so it's it's really been a mixed bag.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. Like the first 2 weeks, it was first week especially. Like I think I saw Shonda Rhimes like had an Instagram post that teachers deserve like $1 million salaries, and I was like, that's right. Yes. And then and I get it for parents, especially those without education backgrounds. It's really hard. They're teaching in a single room classroom with kids at all varying levels, and if they have special needs kids, we talked about this. Last time I was on, my nephew and his stepbrothers have special needs. And that's, it's kind of tricky when you're not even an educator. Like, how do you facilitate that, let alone a gen ed teacher who doesn't have a background in differentiation or modification to that level? Or, like I'm looking at some of the side conversation about, like you said, OG and, speech and all of those related services that kids are not necessarily getting unless schools and those service members, those service teams are creating those opportunities. So, I think as we move further in, I think people are realizing like, I need to get on the ball, and like the parents are realizing this is my new normal too. And it's not just
yeah. And one of the things that we talked about as a staff was, it's every now and then you get those moments where you're like, okay, here's how I have to think about it. And one of the things I told my staff is to imagine that our parents are now co-teachers, but they're first year co-teachers. And they have, like if they don't have any experience in education, like you're giving them this information, but they really don't know what to do with it or how to process it. And so I think also too, we have where that every classroom at least once a week is holding an online Zoom or Loom classroom meeting. And so, it's like, our thing also is concerned about that social connection, because at elementary school, that's what it's about. It's about seeing your teacher every day. It's about seeing your principal every day. It's about those connections with your classmates. And so one of the things we started doing this past week was that every teacher was holding an online virtual class meeting. And, some of them were just check-ins. Some of them at the kindergarten level, I was popping in this week to show and tells, which are always interesting online. But then, we have like our pre-K autism class where, the teacher was on and all the kids got on and she just did a story time, and that was all that they needed. And it was a social story. And, we're finding ways to make it work.
Right.
And, now this past week with the mandate, not the mandate, but the decision that came down to say that you could now provide services virtually is going to be a game changer. My speech teachers, my OT, my PT, and even some of my resource room, like my Orton Gillingham teachers were like, okay, perfect. We know exactly where we need to go with this. And we're just trying to navigate those waters of how to deliver those services right now.
But you're creating a plan. I think what I appreciate most from parents, and I wish that like we had parents listening to this and not just educators, but I don't know too many, as Dan put it, homeschooling parents who are participating in this kind of a chat. But I wish that they realized that like everything's very fluid. We'll try this, and when it doesn't work, we try something else. Much like we are in the classroom, when one thing doesn't work, you pivot. Sometimes you pivot within like the first 10 minutes of your lesson. If you're really on it, you pivot and you're like, okay, guys, like, let's all stop right now. Let's think about what's happening for me that's not working. Let's move to something else. And I think that there's a lot of pivoting. Like I know we started out with Zoom as one of our options for having our virtual meetings. And then all of a sudden it was like, we are not using Zoom anymore. I think AJ and Chris can speak to the reasons why, but like that was all over the news of how people were getting hacked. And it just wasn't a good look, especially at my level. I'm in a 3-4-5 building. Like you can't have those types of shenanigans happening with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. So yeah, I do see the awe factor going away and more of a deep-hearted like appreciation. But I really feel like sometimes at this point, parents are beginning to lose a little bit of hope. And I wonder how we can turn that tide for them as well.
Well, I think part of that goes in with the flexibility of it. And, it's also being understanding of the fact that, if you can't get online, your child can't turn in the work during that typical school day, that's okay. If they're doing it offline because they are just not sitting in front of a device and you're going to take a picture of it and email it to the teacher, that's okay. It's having that flexibility of it. I can honestly tell you, like, even now at 9:00 on a Sunday evening, close to 9:00 on a Sunday evening, like I'm still getting submissions from students in Google Classroom because they've done the work, but the parents now are being the ones to submit it, and having that flexibility with that. I also think too that, I think unfortunately we are settling into this new normal and people are settling into a routine. And once they figure that out and navigate those waters, then all of this will just continue to run a little bit more smoothly.
Mm-hmm. I think, for me, after the break, because I go out, my last day is on Tuesday, but I think, my main focus these last 3 weeks has primarily been my students. So all of my daily communication is to my students. And, I've reached out to the parents like maybe 3 or 4 times, but I think I need to do more check-ins and offer, without overwhelming, but offer them some strategies at home that are helpful because I understand the struggle. My kids are very independent. They're also very, they like the work that they're doing right now. They're a little sad not to see their friends, but, other than that, there's a willingness to do the work. And my kids are much older, so I'm not sitting at the table with them,
Yeah.
talking about like, doubles plus one and doubles minus one. And I think if I were, I don't know where I'd be right now.
Yeah. And I think, Chris, you're working on colors or all of that right now, too.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun teaching pre-K, let me tell you.
Yeah. One of the things, too, that we have really made a cognizant effort to do is that we brought our guidance counselors, our school nurses, and our school psychologists together. And they have created a litany of resources that are available for parents, for staff, for students, and for families to kind of help you through this process. And one of the things that we have been very focused on is the social emotional well-being of our kids. And if we get an email or a report that a student is absent, like one of us, whether it's the guidance counselor, the school nurse, or myself, we're calling that family. We're calling to say, okay, is everything all right? Do you need any help? Do you need any assistance? My guidance counselor has been crucial in reaching out to families that we know might be struggling during this time, and also their case managers for special ed. They've been, really a team player in this to say, okay, we need to step up and rethink about how we support our students. And we had, one student who, emotionally was really, really struggling with this. And so I think we had about 5 of the students' teachers get on a Google Hangout and just to kind of check in and say, hi, how are you? We're still here. We still love you. And that set the entire week off for that child where that they can then be productive. And so it's really a matter of also too, knowing your kids and being able to reach out to those who need it and those who aren't asking for help, saying, okay, they haven't checked in a day or 2 days. Let's make a phone call.
Yeah.
Jill, what are your thoughts on how you think elementary, or just based on your experience in education, how do you think all of this is actually going to impact education going forward?
That's interesting because I was listening to your conversation before I jumped on. And, I kind of agree with what AJ was saying that, every now and then it is nice to have a snow day and have it be like a snow day, like we're all used to having, and not having to worry about getting on and checking in and doing all of that. But I do think that this is going to reshape not only extended time that you may have to spend outside of your classroom, but also really rethink about alternate forms of education. And we've always looked at that from a secondary type of level. And so, even with my experience as a director of curriculum for K-12, we really looked at that as secondary and kind of dabbled a little bit in middle school and how can we, bring this alternate virtual versus live, face-to-face instruction into it. But I think now with this whole experience, we're really going to rethink how that's done also at the elementary level and, really start to be able to meet the needs of those students where a traditional schooling setting is maybe not appropriate or maybe not most conducive for their learning. And how can we now navigate those waters? I had one teacher reach out to me the other day and said, if we are going to move in this type of virtual direction, I want to be first on your list to be considered for this because this is my game. This is what I'm doing. I love it. And the lessons that this teacher is providing are amazing and incredible. So I really think we're going to see that now kind of not so much trickle down, but I think it's more of a flow. I think we're going to see that flow down into the elementary level.
So, Jill, I'm going to put you on the spot right now since you are a principal. You have big decision making. So when you think about the things that are going on, what's one thing you want to see implemented next year to start the school year to make your teachers or students more comfortable with technology, or if anything like this ever happens again?
That's a great question. I think just as an administrator and as somebody who has a stake in forming that foundation for students, for me, it's being given that flexibility in order to know what type of educational plan is going to be best for my student. I mean, like I've said, I'm fortunate enough where that I know every one of my kids in my building. And I know I could probably tick off easily, probably 10% of my population where this type of formula of this type of maybe even blended learning will work for my students. But me as an administrator, being given that flexibility to say, this is what's best for my student, and here's how we have to provide it.
That's perfect.
Yep.
I like that it's not like one thing. It's not like, oh, I want to introduce this tool that teachers. I like your idea there.
Well, you know what it is too, AJ, is there's so much being kind of thrown at us right now as educators, which is a wonderful thing. There are so many companies who are opening up and giving so many free resources, but
I've so many that are still sending out sales emails.
Oh, but that's I know. Yeah, well, that's it's also budget time, so we also have to take that into consideration. But I think it's also too where, I've told my teachers, I said, ignore all of that you get. Let me be that funnel. And so whenever things come to me, I'm really doing that research. I'm navigating this system to say, okay, is this going to benefit my students? And if I feel it would, then I pass that information on to my teachers, because there is just so much being thrown all at this, all at us at this time that I have to be there for my teachers, because I also have to remember the emotional well-being of my teachers, because not only are they trying to navigate brand new waters in trying to educate students, but it's also they're also trying to balance home life. And most of my teachers have kids at home. They've got families. They're dealing with elderly parents. They're dealing with, there's so much going on that I don't want them to have to worry about this. Like, let me take that on. And that's one of the things that I have done as an administrator. And you know what? Yeah. Would it be easy for me to say, yes, I want this, let's budget for it? Very easily. But I think overall, for the benefit of our kids, if we can say, here's what I need for this student, and being given the resources, and here's the resources I need to be able to do that, I think that is so much more powerful than just say, okay, yeah, everybody jump on board. It's not going to work for everybody.
No, you need to meet people where they are and make sure that it's meaningful for them. That's with every PD. I mean, that's not going to change or move. That beginning point is not really going to change too much, hopefully.
I agree. Something was thrown out there about what does PD look like in the future?
What are your thoughts on that?
I see, us really as buildings, as embracing the EdCamp model, and what does that look like? And so it's not, and we've all fallen into it. It's the one size fits all, it's the district initiative, and let's make sure that everybody's on the same page with this, because again, like I said, it's a one size, it's one for all. And so I really see this, and I started doing this when I was a director of curriculum, as doing building based, almost like mini ed camps, where that you had the staff that you knew that you could rely on to provide that PD, and let the teachers decide what they want to do. Let the staff decide what they want to do. it's for us at the elementary school, it's really been a crash course in technology over the past 3 weeks.
Mhm.
And, we've got some teachers who are very strong in some of the technologies that are available and are providing that assistance online. And you've got others that are like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Where do I go? Who do I ask? And we're providing that for them. But I really see it moving forward as that, okay, let's like, this is an opportunity for us to really, really blow up education and move away from that traditional model of all kids going to a classroom, even if they have a device, if it's a supported class, if it's a blended class, but there's still that I'm the teacher. I have to provide the content of learning how to navigate the tools that are out there in order to maybe provide that in an alternate setting or in an alternate way. Again, it just goes back to what is best for the kids. And if you know your kids, you're going to know what's best for them.
And if you know your teachers, you'll know how to make them,
Yes.
rise to the occasion. And it sounds like they are really striving in your school. So kudos to you. Kudos to your teachers. That's fantastic. And your kids sound like they are in great hands. And I applaud everything that you're doing. It's like brilliant.
Thanks. They are. I mean, I'm so proud of it. I always lovingly refer to us as a family. And like, this is really, really proving that my staff is a family and we're all in this together. And, I've always said this, no matter what position I've ever been in, I've always said, I will never ask you to do anything I wouldn't do myself. And I mean, it's also, I'm rolling up my sleeves and I'm getting in there with them and figuring it out because I'm also learning a lot myself.
Yep. And that's it. This is one big universal learning experience for everyone involved. And if it's not, then you're not doing it right.
Jill, you talked about how this could, really blow up education. We've got the opportunity to, blow this up. And I was talking with my wife, Caitlin, who, as you know, is in education. And for those who's listening who don't know, she's a high school librarian. And we were talking about how maybe this will maybe roll back the hands of time. And, maybe we can actually go back to before education was the factory model and put the kids in the classroom and kind of push them through 12, 13 years of schooling. What was education like before that? When you learned what you needed to know and you kind of got some direction and you were able to kind of pursue what you wanted to do based on what like society needed. So, vocational type education. And there's really an opportunity to, I think, be creative with how we do school. And I like how you said, we can kind of blow that up. But, I think we also run the risk that once we get back into our schools, a lot of people are going to go, back to what I know.
Yeah.
And I'm really scared of that.
Yeah. I think, again, that falls to the leaders of the buildings and the leaders of the district to say, okay, what now have we learned from this experience? And what can we, when we look at education, what can we, what can we stop? What can we continue? And what can we then change? And that is such a powerful exercise to do, especially as a leader, but also as a teacher, to think about your own instruction. Okay, what I've always done, what I know, what I've been doing for years, what can I stop? And what can I really now continue doing? Because you know what? It's worked. And what can I change? And I think one of the biggest things that we're going to see a change in is in assessment and how we assess learning, how we assess our students, and really begin designing what is truly alternate assessments and what is truly a way to honestly gauge student learning. And, it's going to move away from your traditional paper and pencil, or, whether it's an online test or whether it's, sitting at a desk type of assessment. I really think we need to take a really hard look at that and say, okay, one, what's important? And two, how do we navigate and how do we gauge our students' learning? And that is just, I think, I would hope to think, and I know myself, it's something I'm going to be looking at, is how do we really rethink assessment?
I already rethink it, being that I don't give traditional tests and quizzes anymore. I do it in high school social studies with DBQs and project-based learning, and I'm not dependent on multiple choice, short answer, and true false.
Yeah.
To quote somebody who said this at some point, ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, I think that's the best part about all this. I think this is such a negative, and what's going on around us, it really is a negative. But I think the fact that we can kind of rethink education, especially assessments, like Chris, you just mentioned, like all of a sudden now it's like, oh my gosh, is this really meaningful? Is this important? Do we have to give these kids tests just to see what they get, to see what they know, or can we really find something more meaningful, like choice boards or essays or projects, or something that actually is going to help them design and create and think?
Can we find ways to focus on skills-based learning and
authentic assessment?
Authentic assessment. And, does it have to be about content, or can it be about the things that are going to outlast their K-12 experience?
Yeah, this is the shift.
Understandings and essential questions and things like that.
Yeah, and I think traditionally when you look across the history of education, a lot of it has come from top down. So it comes from the university level down, and it trickles down to say, okay, here's what we expect in order for students to be to gain entrance into our school or university. And then, okay, how do we as educators then in K-12 get them to that point? But I think this movement is going to be a K-12 and up movement. It's going to be a reverse movement, and it's needed. Let's put it out there. It is needed. Our system has been for hundreds of years, and it's antiquated, and it just doesn't work anymore.
And Al is waiting patiently on hold, so we'll get him in a little bit. But he made a comment in the chat about, take a look at the AP exams. If I'm a student right now and I have to take a 45-minute essay-based computer AP exam, and I'm a kid coming up, and why is the AP next year going to go back to, 3 and 4 hour exams where you got to answer, I didn't take AP class. I don't know how many questions are on these things, but are we going to need to go back to what the AP exam used to be? Or can we do 45-minute couple of essay questions, get your college credit, and, move on with your life?
Well, and the other part of that too is I recognize the need for change at the elementary level with the adoption and integration of a better use of technology. And as a former tech coach, I really see that as a K-12 need, not just a middle school, elementary, or high school need. But I think some of the things that I've seen at my experiences in the middle and high school level is that, hopefully those teachers who were used to standing up at the front of the room, using their whiteboard or their chalkboard, or I worked with teachers who still used a traditional overhead projector with
of the board.
their vis-a-vis markers, and they're rolling over the projector. Hopefully they're learning that is not the end.
Palm.
Right. That's not the end all be all of how to design a lesson. Yeah.
I was just looking at a comment that Christine made. She said that she had her students create an infographic, and why not? Again, really rethinking how we are assessing student learning. And it's not even traditional, your weekly assessment. You were talking about your week, somebody mentioned on here, a weekly quiz. It's not about that anymore. It's not. It is about that authentic learning And how are the students then giving us the information that they have internalized the knowledge that they need in order to move to the next level?
I was just giving a thumbs up to Mike Brilla in the chat. He had never heard the term Lord of the Board. Let me throw another one of my favorites, the Sage on the Stage.
Oh, yes. Yes. It's not about that anymore.
Yeah, no. You should have already transitioned to being a guide on the side. Look, I'm full of it tonight.
You're always full of it, Chris.
Well, you know what? Speaking of full of it, hey, this is our show. We can have more than one caller at a time. So you know what, Al, you've been very patient. Long-time fan of the program. Let's welcome aboard Al Spiegel. And if anybody else wants to hop in, we can accommodate another person on screen. I can hop off, whatever the case may be. So go to podcastpd.com/join. Before Al, just hold on one second while you're on screen. Looking good, by the way. Thank you to everybody who is participating in the chat tonight. A lot of great comments. So I would like to hit on as many as we can. So just keep firing away and feel free to come on into the chat here on video, podcastpd.com/join. And if you're having fun, share this bad boy on Twitter. You're watching on YouTube, click that share button, smash that subscribe, bell, the whole thing. All right, Al, what's up? Al, turn your microphone on.
And you know what? I just want to really quick respond to Bruce.
Al, what's that? Al, what pipes? All the way from Bergen Catholic.
Really quick,
No,
Bruce.
can't hear you.
No.
Al, sorry, you're going to have to call back when you have a better line.
Oh, Bruce asked the question of, can we survive without state testing? Yes.
Al, get it.
Yes.
Not Al. Bruce, get in here. Can we
Bruce.
survive without state testing? Bruce, fire up video. Get on here. Let's go.
Yeah, Dan, if
We
you
just have to find something else to tie the money to, I guess, right?
Yeah, and you know what? It doesn't have to be tied to teacher performance either.
Wait, how about this one? Can't we just give school districts the money they need? Just give us the money we need.
No, you got to jump over a hurdle.
Put a toothpick on the ground. Make people step over it. Just give the money we need.
Yeah. Or you know what? You're only as good as your summative rating. Like, really? No. We're past that.
Yeah, right. All right. Al, let's try again.
This time better? There you go. First of
Al
all,
Spiegel, everybody.
thanks. And let's go back to, first of all, never tell an only child that he looks good on camera. So that's number one. How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks for joining us
We're
again.
good. We're
Absolutely.
getting fired up, Al. Come on.
Yeah, I tell you. No, you can have them. I you know, everything's going to change. Like, it's all, I can't even think about, you know, I like Chris's point. We're not going back to 4-hour written AP tests, because the College Board just said, hey, we could do this all online. So if they go back, there'll be a revolt. If we go back and say, oh, there'll be, you know, we'll go back to paper tests. You know, I'm just, yeah. Yeah, Christine and I work together, so ignore her comment about feeding my ego. That's not the case at all. Just ignore it.
Feed me.
Yeah, boot her out of the chat. But we're not going back to any of that. It's you know, it's done. Like, if this whole thing doesn't teach us that we can do education a different way, then forget it. It would be all in vain, because we can do it differently.
See, but you say that, Al, as an educator and a parent, you can see that it's different and we can make these changes. But those people who are in the State Department are just going to say, you know what, we don't need to change anything. You know, it was too drastic. It was too much change, and let's just go back and we'll forget this ever happened, because nothing's going to change. You know, coming from the state, there is nothing that's going to change going forward.
Hey, by cricky, Corona be damned, we're going to give the kids pencil tests.
And weekly spelling tests.
Yeah,
In cursive. We're going to write in cursive too.
yeah. Well,
Hey,
think about it.
I like cursive.
We're not going back to school this year. I mean, I don't think anybody's, you know, and let's be realistic, we're not going back, you know. So it's like, and I look at it from a high school standpoint, you know, we give final exams, so we need to be thinking now about, okay, well, what are we going to do for some type of final assessment? Because I've got teachers that are giving tests where the kids have to put their camera on their other device so the teacher can see what they're doing and they're not cheating. Come on.
I had to proctor my son's French test. And then it was, I know.
Awesome.
And I was like, all right, bud,
Stacey.
I know. I was like, it's 2:00. You have to take your test now or until 4. So let's come out. He goes, seriously? I was like, yep. Madame Kim said that you need to do this. And he, like, I get it. Like, he was so frustrated. And then it would serve him to do a little bit better studying. But like, there was this one point of frustration where like, he's looking at it. And he had to do it on Ed Puzzle, which again was just like this whole thing. And I was like, okay, whatever. Again, we're using technology in a different way. Hopefully for this teacher it was something different or new. But I could see his frustration because one of the answers was like you had to pick 2 choices or all the choices that applied. And one choice had I guess, different pronouns that you could use. I don't know. I don't know French. But there was like one minor difference between his selected choice and the other one, and his had more options, and that was the correct answer. So he's like, oh, I got this wrong. And like, he's beating himself up over this like whole crazy new experience, and he's doing it in front of me. That's not a cool way to take a test. Like, why do you have to have a weekly spelling test? Why does assessment have to feel like this? Like, Al, I feel bad for you. We don't even do midterms and or like midterm exams or final exams anymore in my district. So the fact that you're like still there, like, that's another thing. Like, hopefully in 2020, 2021, that will be a thing of the past, right?
Yeah. What else can we do to prove student learning? And it doesn't have to be taking a test, because
what about a year-long portfolio?
On the higher ed side, I've never given a cumulative semester exam, nor in my graduate classes. I don't give final exams. It's either a project or, the supervision class was actually an observation, which they can't do now. But generally, it's something, kinesthetic, where they actually can learn something as opposed to taking a test.
And you know what, too, Al? This is also going to do? This is blowing class rank out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
It is blowing it out of the water, which is, again, something I personally and professionally feel is needed. And
guess what? The next thing you're going to go are number grades.
Yeah.
Why do we need number grades? Because if I could prove a kid's learning something, and
can we just pass go, collect $200 and get rid of grades?
Okay, let's just all go to Trenton and run the DOE.
We've got, there's 5 of us, and I'll bring Christine because I know her. So, but really, look at all these unintended consequences of what's going to happen, because we're not going back to how it used to be. And I think there's enough people in the trenches who are doing this now who are going to say, hey, no, we're not. There's no reason to, because we've come so far so fast. There's no reason to go back to how it used to be.
Speaking of the trenches and no reason to do anything, I'll bring on Bruce.
You guys didn't get the sarcasm in the testing comment?
Oh, I totally got it.
Hey, come on, Bruce.
Think
still
about
got to acknowledge it.
Think about the amount of time that we spend in test prep, the amount of money we spend in test prep, then the amount of time to take the test, and then you don't get the results right away. So I think this was, a long time coming. And I'll tell you, more and more colleges, and I put in the comments, it started in Harvard, in the Ivy Leagues. The SAT and ACT doesn't count because they go test optional. Every single kid has a 4.5. So what does that mean? So I think a lot of them have gone away from the standardized testing, and they're looking for more the whole person. What do you do with your family? What do you do with your community, along with academically what you could, give the school, so it becomes a little bit more, diversified. And the other point is, the 5 of you know, and I know, in your whole class, in your whole school as a principal, these are the kids that are on this level. These are the kids in the middle. These are the kids that we have to help. Any good teacher worth their salt is going to know those things without having a state test to give them numbers to say that they need to improve on this subset of whatever subject. As the teacher already. So I don't think you need the testing information just to substantiate what you know. And the test information doesn't come in until the next year. Then you don't have those kids again.
So I want to touch on that for 1 second. I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say about this. And if you're in the chat, drop this as well. I was talking to my parents the other night who are not educators. They don't really know the idea of like state testing and stuff like that. And they're like, are these kids going to fall behind? I think we would say yes, because they're not getting that socialization that they need. They're not doing everything that they'd be doing in school. But when you think about it, now it's April, and we look at April and May, which we call the test prep months to begin with. Then you have June, which is half days and class parties and field trips and all that stuff. Are our kids, and is your opinion, are our kids actually falling behind, or are they still getting a quality education virtually, just missing some components that they're going to have face to face?
I know there's definitely content that will not be taught in the same way, right? Like, and I don't know what that content at my grade level is because it's my first time teaching 5th grade, but it will be very interesting to have conversations with my grade level colleagues this time next year to see what they missed in 4th grade or what didn't necessarily hit in the same way that it has in the past. You know, like I've taught everything from 1st to 5th grade now at the elementary level. And like, it's amazing to know what I taught them in 1st grade and what they seem very unaware of by the time they get to 5th grade. Like, it's just like, how do you not know that? Because I know I taught it when I taught 1st grade. Like, so the things that they lose from summer slide or like, you know, at some levels it's an introduction and then you build upon that. Like I'm thinking math in particular, and like Jamie can probably talk about this, AJ, right? Like those things that have a trajectory that takes you through. It'll be interesting to see like, okay, we left learning geometry. Like that was our next unit of study. So what will that look like when, you know, our kids did not get the same geometry instruction that they've gotten in the past? So what will that look like for them come next spring as 5th graders? I think it's the only test. I get your point though. I see what you're saying. Like, you know, right now for reading and writing, we're in a civil rights unit, so like, and it's all opinion and research. But then when we were supposed to get back from spring break, we do switch it and we move into some of those test taking skills in the ELA areas. And then, that's a whole segment of some of the skills that we're teaching. And then it is those end of the year activities. So I don't know. I'll have to have a conversation this time next year. AJ, just remind me to have this conversation next year with my colleagues.
Absolutely.
I just asked my 6th grade son, and he said he feels like he's not as far along as he thought he'd be. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, tell them that I'm also advanced. That's he's like his father. I can't. But I think he feels like, you know, they're not, you know, while they're doing, it's not, I guess the content is a slower pace. Okay, Ryan, you know, like it's a slower, they're just not moving at the pace where they would be in the classroom, you know, because
I also think there's a realization that like, we're also relying on parents to be maybe not the educator, but come in as some type of instructional assistant to aid the curriculum and content that, you know, we're expecting to be delivered at home. And it is not the same.
Yeah.
So we have to like teach to not the least common denominator, but a level where everyone can get in there. And it is lower than someone who is elevated like your child. Yeah. And, you know, my kids would be saying the same thing. Yeah. So there's no shame in that.
Yeah. And I know, you know, I've had, even as an educator, I still have a problem. They do everyday math. And I struggle.
Still?
Yeah. They run it up through, the twins are in 3rd. I forget when they end it. He's not. Christopher, you don't do everyday math, do you? No. Connect it. Yeah, connected. Yeah. But the younger ones, they're, you know, trying to explain to them and everything, you know, as an educator, I get, okay, we have to, you know, we're going to explain this. How do we get here? But if you don't have that kind of background, this is really baptism by fire for some of these parents trying to be able to do that kind of homework. And that's, you know, excuse me, that's a real struggle. That's, you know, or are they going to then fall behind because their parents can't support them? Now, I know my kids' teacher started doing a virtual meet this week with the kids, because I think there was a lot of, hey, we want to see one another, but also if they need extra help and they want to ask a question, you know, those teachers were there for, you know, an hour or whatever around lunchtime to say, you know, okay, explain, you know, if you have a question, we can work it out. So I think that part has to be, everybody at some point has to be doing that. Just, I think, to have that connection with the kids, but also it's easier for me to explain a problem as opposed to try to type it out or take a picture or email it,
Yeah.
But I think that also goes back to kind of what we were saying before is, okay, do we need to now even revisit the standards and say, okay, why are the powers that be that are sitting in Trenton and Washington, D.C., who are not educators, telling us and dictating what our students need to learn and master by the time they leave? And how come our voices in that are so small? And it's just like the whole system is being upended. And, it's also a matter of, okay, let's reprioritize about what our kids really need and what they're going to be able to utilize going through the rest of their educational careers.
Just one thing I was going to say, to Jill's point about we're going to redo everything. If you want to take a look at the light at the end of the tunnel, possibly when Katrina happened in New Orleans, they didn't go to school for 4 months. And now 10 years later, 15 years later, it was 10 years later, the article I saw, their test scores doubled. Why did their test scores double? Because they redid and they revamped the whole education system because it wasn't working originally. So, two things. I don't think these months are really going to matter overall, like in a student's career. And I think a lot of really good, innovative things are going to come out of this that are going to change, curriculum going forward. And as Jill was saying, I agree with her. Like, do you really understand the topic is so much more important than can you take the quiz on it and it that particular day?
Yeah.
Excellent point, Bruce. That's why I let you in here.
Was it just because of the Knicks shirt?
If I had seen the whole thing, I would have been crying when I brought you on. But that's a sad tale for another day, of course.
That's true.
So as we start to wrap up, thank you to Bruce and Al and Jill for spending some time with us tonight, and thank you to everybody in the chat who has been here and left comments. Let's kind of go around and as we say goodbye, just make one prediction or one wish for education beyond spring 2020. And I will go first to give the other 5 people time to think. My wish is for all the children of the world. No. If you know, you know. My wish for education.
Hang on, here. Do you need this, Chris?
My wish for education going forward is that teachers become more confident and empowered to be creative and innovative long term and not feel stifled or restricted in any way when they want to do what they believe is best for their students. And I will pass the torch to Jill.
Oh, man. I think in addition to that, and building upon what Chris said, I think it's also that we really get back to being truly student focused. And I hope that we can now move into a place where we think outside the traditional boundaries about how to educate each individual student effectively in a manner in which they will blossom and grow as learners.
True that, yo.
Stacey, continue.
I was drinking water when that came out of my mouth, but whatever. I would like to see, to Jill's point earlier, and some of the conversation, a shift in PD that relies on a reflective practice from this, from pretty much from March 13th, when we all went to remote learning, to the end of the year, where people take a really hard look at the practices they put in place for those last 2.5 months of school, 3.5 months of school, and then kind of what they can do to adopt some of that, move further, and really take a look at what they need to facilitate that either on their own or collaboratively. I feel like there are so many different PD opportunities that come to mind for this, whether it be rogue PD like Rich Chiz would kind of designate, or formal PD that comes from grade level initiatives, building initiatives, district initiatives.
Al, what do you got?
I wish we get out of our own way. I really do. Like, and we do throw the baby out with the bathwater, because next year it's anything's on the table, and I think that this being able for us to rethink pretty much how we do everything in the last 3 weeks, we have to stop with we have to have a teacher-centered room, and we have to have homework, and we have to have grades. I think we should, and the conversation for you should be from the bottom up, as people start asking, why are we doing this? Well, because we didn't have to when we were doing in a virtual environment. Why are we giving tests? Why are we giving homework? Why are we, making them write in a notebook? Why anything? We just keep asking the questions, and we push the conversation from that level, as opposed to the people who don't know what they're talking about telling us what they think is important, as opposed to we push that up and say, this is what, we need to do. And I think a lot of people realize, whether it's if you look at it from a PR standpoint or what, that, oh wow, they're valuable people, really look at the great job they do. Okay, let's run with that, and say, hey, I think there's a lot of things that we can do now that we have your attention. Here's what we can do, and move forward. So let's get out of our own way, and just there's no limit to what we could do.
All right, Bruce, what do you got?
I mean, I think the most important thing now is that we were ready for a 2 or 3 week sprint, and there's no 100-yard dash here. It is a marathon. Pace yourself. Students pace themselves. And I think really wellness is going to be seen more than anything to take care of yourself, for kids to take care of themselves. And, that's so important, along with, a lot of the other changes. I think it's going to be a lot of innovation coming out of how can you now pace yourself to continue to teach now that you got your feet a little bit wet. And if some people have spring break or not, then moving forward into the last marking period, what are some different ways now that you can use video, that you could use some of the new methods that you learned? And I really think pacing ourselves. I know in my own district, they fought to have spring break for the teachers, for teacher wellness, just to get a break after 3 weeks to kind of recharge and rethink everything. And I know a lot of other school districts didn't do that because they have to deliver lunch to kids and, for other reasons. But I really think wellness is going to be huge, so we can survive and do well in this. And my final point, and I've heard more and more of it today, I've been on a couple of these things, support the parents more. Like the parents at home, even if they are teachers, if like AJ, they have younger kids at home, or the parents might not be home. They might be working in a healthcare worker in the hospital. And I think more support for the parents somehow, to help them out, because they found out very quickly what we know. I mean, it's not easy, and they might only have 1 or 2 kids at home. We know how many kids, that we have in school. So support the parents, support wellness, and just pace yourself and take care of yourself.
The wellness piece is key, and it's not just
Amen.
It's not just kid. It's not just teacher wellness, but it's also kid wellness, and making sure like those check-ins, like Jill was saying earlier, those things are so important.
Oh my goodness, that's so simple.
AJ?
So because I'm last, I'm just going to say whatever I want to. I'm just going to take the time here. And what I was thinking, and I have a bunch of things that I was actually thinking. So thank you for keeping me last. I wish that teachers now have more voice when it comes to decision making. That's one of my wishes. I wish that people now embrace the educational technology a little bit more. I hope people kind of like see actually is important. And I wish that assessment changes to become more authentic and real and not just question and answer. And my prediction, nothing changes. We're still going to go back to grades. We're still going to go back to evaluations and SGOs, and we're still going to go back to. Yeah, I said it. We're going to go back.
This is bull dinky. No, this is bull dinky.
It's like I don't talk to myself enough. Nothing's going to change. It's just going to be whatever it is. People are going to go into their classrooms, let's say September, because that's what it looks like around here. And they're going to go back to their ways, and they're going to throw in some technology every now and then. But I think it's all going to go back to what they know, what they're comfortable with, and maybe a little bit here and there will get pushed. But, hopefully all of the ridiculous initiatives that get passed down are a thing of the past. We don't have to worry about some of the ridiculous stuff, but we focus on the whole child. We focus on social emotional learning and wellness and all those great ideas that go along with kids being in school with one another. And there, I can say whatever I want to because I'm the co-host and you made me go last.
Mr. Podcast over here.
No, not Mr. Podcast. Just Mr. I'm just thinking right now.
So that'll do it for Podcast PD episode 70. That's a milestone of some kind. 70 episodes of this fine podcast program. And
Al has his own sound effects in the back.
Yeah, there are 3 sound effects.
That was very timely.
Oh, their sound effects are right.
Exciting.
Yeah. Mhm. Anybody want one? I rent them by the hour.
I got
I've
enough.
got 2.
I'm good.
I'm good.
So if you're not subscribed to the podcast, if you're watching here on YouTube, make sure you go to podcastpd.com/go on your podcast listening device of choice, and that'll help you subscribe, share the show, all that good stuff. You can find our guest tonight, all of them on Twitter. I will include their Twitter handles in the show notes out at podcastpd.com/70. And Stacey?
All right. Well, it is time to say goodnight. So say goodnight, Bruce.
Good night, everybody. Good job.
Say goodnight, Al.
Good night, Al.
Say goodnight, Jill.
Good night, everyone.
Say goodnight, AJ.
Good night, AJ.
Say goodnight, Chris.
Good night, Chris.
Good night, Podcast PD.
Good night, Mr. Nessie.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.